Hello, everyone. And thank you, Jeff. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate it. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you. So
Okay,
I'm assuming
good.
everybody else can.
All right, I see a thumbs up, so that's good. I will,
Excellent.
I will share my screen. Oh, Jeff has to
Oh,
let me
sorry
share
about
my
that.
screen.
Sorry, I'm getting it.
That's okay.
I always forget. Now you can do it.
Perfect. There we go.
Yep, can see them.
Perfect. There we go. So hello, I'm Gretchen Kelly. I'm the airport manager at the San Carlos and Half Moon Bay airports, San Mateo County airports. And I'm just going to give an overview of my background, my job, a typical day in the life of this airport manager. I don't know that there's actually a typical day in airport manager overall. This slide here is just a graphical overview of my background, a little bit of my education, some of my work experience, and some of the organizations that I've been involved with over the years. I am a private pilot, and actually this month is 30 years since I received my private pilot's license. So I was 19 years old when I earned my private pilot's license. So now everybody knows how old I am. And I've been flying mostly tail draggers. Over the years, fun fact, I did my primary flight training at SFO. And I think I was too young and too naive to realize how fortunate I was, how very lucky I was to be flying Grumman Tiger, amongst all the heavy iron and, airplanes at SFO, getting on midway, midpoint of the runway, holding on the runway for 4 minutes for wake turbulence, before taking off. That was just how I learned to fly. So it was very unique experience. I wasn't able to solo at SFO, the tower, for obvious reasons, didn't allow that. So I soloed at Palo Alto and actually finished up the last bit of my training at Palo Alto Airport, but I did the bulk of my training at SFO, which was amazing. So while in college, I worked at Jepson. They were located in Los Gatos at the time, where the Netflix building is now. I started as an intern while I was going to San Jose State in the aviation program there. When I went to San Jose State, the aviation program was still located at San Jose International Airport. Now the program has relocated to Retail View Airport. And I worked at Jepson first as an intern, then in the accounting department. So I was really good at converting foreign currency to US currency. And then I worked the graveyard shift as an international flight planner, which was a really fascinating job and a great introduction to the world of corporate aviation. So we used, this was in the 90s, so we used telex machines and fax machines and the phone with cords to haggle over Cuba overflight permits, arrange ground handling all over the world. It was, a fascinating job. I learned a lot about geography, a lot about aviation, and all of the behind the scenes, arrangements that go into, international flights and flight planning. And then after Jepson, I actually worked here at the San Mateo County airports as an airport operations specialist. I'll talk about more about that in a minute. And then San Jose International Airport and the FAA for about 10 years. I went back to school and got a master's degree in public administration, public policy, with an emphasis in local government. And some of the organizations that I've been involved in, Women in Aviation, the Upwind Scholarship. If people aren't aware of the Upwind Scholarship, it's based here at the San Carlos Airport. It's funded by users and businesses of the San Carlos and Half Moon Bay airports. And the program I was on the board for about 5 years, and it was an amazing experience. I was very fortunate to be a part of the organization. Started in 2013, and the organization's goal was to create 20 new pilots by 2020, and they exceeded that goal. So the program takes local high school students and gives them scholarships. So high school juniors, and the goal of the program is to turn them into pilots during the summer between their junior and senior year. So at no cost to them, they go through a 9-week intensive program from ground school all the way to check ride in 9 weeks at the San Carlos airport. And it's not this last summer because of social distancing, but you may have seen teenagers around the airport flying at the San Carlos Flight Center, which is the school that does the training. It's just amazing. And then the kids and the parents, they usually stay involved in the airport. They become donors, they become volunteers, they get jobs at the airport. It's been a great community building program. And I will move on. So that is me in 1995, probably, as an AOS. This was my first full-time job after college here at the San Mateo County Airport. So I was the first female airport operations specialist hired by the county. And I worked here for about 5 years doing the airfield maintenance, facility maintenance, the aircraft rescue firefighting, you know, all of the things that you see the airport operations specialists are really hardworking staff doing on a day-to-day basis at San Carlos and Half Moon Bay.
Uh-oh, looks like we might have lost Gretchen there. Looks like your screen share dumped out on us, Gretchen. Go ahead and see if you can get it back. And I think you're muted at the moment. A technical issue. If I had music to play in the background, I'd be playing it right now.
You're still muted.
There you go. Now you're back.
All right. Technical difficulties. Sorry about that.
All in a night's work on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll get off this slide. It's bad luck. The other slide is just a picture from San Jose International Airport. One of the challenges of working at airports and airports in general is wildlife management, right? Balancing, not, wildlife being at the airport, certainly not hurting them, but also maintaining a safe airport, right? So you don't want wildlife at airports because birds versus airplanes is bad. So, but so geese, we scare them away. Owls, you can't do that, right? So at San Jose Airport, there were actually artificial owl burrows that were built that the owls lived in. There was a learning curve. Unfortunately, the biologists, the first burrows that they built were too steep and they didn't work out very well for the owls. They rebuilt them and now they have a thriving colony there. So airports are all about balancing needs of the community, needs of the airport, and aviation needs of the wildlife, airport, aviation needs. We do a lot of balancing. This slide's just about my experience with the FAA. I had 3 jobs in the 10 years that I worked at the FAA. I worked as a certification and safety inspector and airport improvement program manager, and then a PFC program manager, which is really a grants manager. 2 different types of grants manager, 2 different types of money. Just one pot of money is bigger than the other. And so both were fascinating jobs. The FAA has 5 lines of business, one of them being the airports division, and I worked for the airports division. So I inspected airports. I would go out and make sure that lighting, signs, marking, pavement, unpaved areas, firefighting equipment, fueling equipment, training records, that sort of thing was all in compliance with FAA regulations. If airports follow all of the rules that the FAA has for them, which we're required to do. Then the FAA gives us grant funds for projects and equipment. So the FAA pays 90% for airport improvement projects. Small airports like San Carlos and Half Moon Bay, mostly that's for pavement and mostly pavement projects, and because we have a smaller pot of money. Larger airports can build terminals, buy things like fire trucks. A couple examples here is a fire truck that I purchased for the McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. A final inspection was going out and driving the truck with the firefighters and making sure it was operational. That was a lot of fun. At San Francisco Airport, as an inspector, I was performing an inspection. I asked the fire department to show me how they would respond to a water incident. So if an aircraft was to go down in the water, how would they respond? And at the time, they had to leave the airport, go through multiple layers of fences, cross a road, and it took like 20 minutes for the fire truck to get to the shoreline. So the result of that inspection was the airport needs to build a water rescue facility. You know, they need to have boats in the water ready to go in case an aircraft ever landed in the water. And so here's a picture of SFO's water rescue facility. So the thing about being an airports inspector for the FAA, and I don't know if this is how it works with aircraft inspectors, but it was a partnership. So we would point out deficiencies, but then we would give airports money to fix the problem. So it was a lot more of a partnership than just punitive. And we were making airports safer. The other one is also an example from SFO was a runway safety initiative, and we were installing runway safety guard lights, the wigwags, at airports around the country. SFO had an issue initially with only putting, I think, 4 lights at each intersection to save money. But just like stop signs, you know, have to be red and then they have to have the white light, and roadways have yellow paint, airports also have standards that they have to follow. And part of my job was to make sure that the airports were complying with all of the standards. I could go on about that all night, so you don't want me nerding out on that, but we got them in compliance with the right number of lights and the right color, everything. So when I tell people that I'm an airport manager, a lot of people think I work in the tower as an air traffic controller, or I work at, you know, a counter as a ticket agent. And, you know, it's just not a job I think people realize is out there. This is a great picture of our tower. We don't get to take pictures in the San Carlos Air Traffic Control Tower very often. I didn't take this picture, but I think it's a fantastic picture. And so I like to share it. But that's not, I would not be able to do that job, but I'm grateful for those that do. And so what we actually do, we airport managers at our airports, a typical day looks more like this. And really, there is no typical day, right? I liken our job to managing a small city or managing a hotel or a hospital, right? We're heavily regulated, and we never know what's going to happen day to day because things just come up. So these pictures are just, one's a public protest. This was about aircraft noise. It was coordinated with us in advance. We knew it was happening. We knew the people that were coming to the protest. A human-powered test flight at Half Moon Bay, which I think it was also at Hiller during the building phase, which was amazing. They had to fly at sunrise, and they couldn't have more than 3 knots of wind. So it was very, very lightweight. I think it was under 250 pounds, including the pilot. It was, and the wings were as long as a 737. So it was an amazing machine. It was very fun to be a part of that project. And so, you know, and there was a lot of advanced coordination on the part of the airport staff. So the firefighting is our staff. The operations staff does aircraft rescue firefighter training each year. So we do live fire training. We have our 2 fire trucks. They're almost the same, one at each airport. And because we're operating those trucks, we train to FAA standards for aircraft rescue firefighter training. And this photo is at Moffett, but now we do the training at Half Moon Bay Airport each year. The company brings a mobile trainer out, and it's fueled by propane, and our staff and the staff from SFO, and then our first responders from Redwood City Fire and Coastside Fire all get to practice using their trucks, putting out the fire to keep us proficient, which is a pretty fun day. And we tell the neighbors ahead of time so they don't think there's a real airplane on fire, which is always good, right? And then we have Hiller's skydiving leprechaun, which, Hiller is really good at coming up with all these really different, innovative ideas, right? So the first time they said, well, we want to have a skydiving leprechaun on St. Patrick's Day. We're like, how do you do that under San Francisco's Class Bravo airspace, right? Well, they made it happen, which they're also really good at doing. So, we fill out the forms with the FAA and coordinate with them, call NorCal Tracon and let them know that the leprechaun's going to be jumping. And we stop all propellers from turning, right? Because you don't want a skydiver jumping onto the airport with any propellers turning on the airport for safety. And with all of those things coordinated, it runs pretty smoothly. And so that's always fun. We like that event. And then this was just some news headlines that I grabbed for typical day examples, but being sued, we get sued quite a bit. I found a headline of us winning one lawsuit, fire training drills, a new restaurant coming to the Half Moon Bay Airport, us getting a grant being announced to the public. So, we like it when we get good news in the press. Last few years, we've had a lot of aircraft noise news in the press. Hiller gets us in the news for, events and fun stuff. So we prefer when it's positive press. And then this is just a great photo that one of our former staff members took of the San Carlos Airport. I just wanted to show a picture of each airport. They're truly beautiful. We're really, really fortunate. I'm very fortunate to work at these two airports and manage these two airports. They're in beautiful locations. They're beautiful. That's San Carlos. And this is Half Moon Bay. I mean, really, it doesn't get much prettier than that. I think this photo is just breathtaking. This is just an overview of, background, budget, businesses. So there's a lot on this slide, and I'm not going to read everything on this slide. But Half Moon Bay Airport is was built for World War II. So designed in 1941, built in 1942. It was deeded to, I think, the state or the Navy, and then the state, and then the county of San Mateo in the 50s. It's about 300 acres. So it's 3 times as big as San Carlos. We have 50 based aircraft there, 5 businesses, less than 50,000 operations a year. So it's not a very busy airport. It's rural. And it really hasn't changed a whole lot since it was built in 1942. We found the original plans from the Corps of Engineers recently. They're amazing. And the airport really has stayed very much the same. There's not a lot of demand for aviation services on the coast. I think a lot of that is weather and services available. And the county provides the fuel there. We don't sell jet fuel. So that may also, contribute to the demand. There's not a lot of hangar space available. But Half Moon Bay is charming. I mean, the airport just has a charm, and I'm sure many of you have been there. It's like going back in time. It's beautiful. And the tenants there are very, very nice. It's like a small town. Everyone knows each other. Everyone flies each other's airplane. If you get a flat tire or you need a tool, people are willing to lend a hand. It's a very friendly airport. And, you can tell I love it there. It's a nice airport. San Carlos is much more business-like. It's busier. I love San Carlos as well. Don't get me wrong. It's just these airports are polar opposites. So San Carlos, built in 1948, across the road, actually, and then it relocated to its current location. We think because of noise, because of the neighborhood that was built right off the end of the runway. San Carlos is about 110 acres. We have 400 base aircraft at San Carlos, so a lot of aircraft on a small parcel, 24 businesses. And I put on here where we make our money at each airport. So one thing that I always like to say when I'm talking about the airports is we operate as an enterprise fund, which means we don't get any county general funds, even though we're a county department and we follow all the county rules and processes, right? We take all of our contracts and leases to the board of supervisors for approval. We follow, as a county department, all of the county rules, in addition to, of course, all the FAA rules, but we're an enterprise fund. So all of the money that we earn at the airports makes up our budget. So we have to earn our own money like a private business, but we operate under the rules of a government agency. So our money comes from hangar fees, business fees, landing and parking fees, event fees, and special use permits. For the most part, that's where we earn our money. So at Half Moon Bay, we have 3 farmers, which is really unique and unusual for an airport to have farming, and cell towers. That's the cell towers and events is where we make most of our money at Half Moon Bay. And then 3rd would be hangars, and probably 4th business fees. And at San Carlos Airport, we make most of our money with non-aeronautical revenue, hangars, and business fees and special use fees. So I think the fact that we're an enterprise fund, so the assistant airport manager, Mike Byrne, is always out hustling money. So he gets us a lot of non-aeronautical revenue, special use permits such as PG&E using the airport, construction companies leasing space. And I'll talk about one of those big projects in another slide. And then, of course, we provide a lot of community benefits like flying organs, flying medical patients, pilots and PAWs, disaster relief, all of the business aviation and pilot training, mechanic training. Hiller brings more than 100,000 people to the airport each year and introduces them to aviation. Not this year, of course, everything's different this year. But when I was on the Upwind Scholarship Committee, so many of the teams said they were introduced to aviation through Hiller's camps and programs, and also through the EAA Young Eagles program, which we also have at the airport. This is, I just want to talk about, this is a very big project that we've been working on for 3 or 4 years. This is it's the rescue project, but it's a Silicon Valley Clean Water. It's the local water and actually the local sewer company. They are building a tunnel under the airport. So they actually built a tunnel under the airport. And now they're building a tunnel from airport property out to the end of Redwood Shores Parkway. And so the shaft that you see on the right side of me, but giant hole, it's about 60 feet across, that's on airport property across Holly Street from the San Carlos Airport main parcel. And we are leasing them that space so that they built this shaft, and then for their gravity pipeline project, and they've put a tunnel boring machine, which is 13 feet in diameter. It's about 40 to 50 feet below the surface, and it took several years to get to that point, but they put this huge tunnel boring machine down in that hole into the 13-foot shaft, and then they tunneled from north of Holly Street to Bear Island, so right underneath the runway, all the way the length of the runway to basically the 3-0 approach end, where we also own part of Bear Island. And then they pulled the machine out in another shaft on airport property and took it apart in like 17 pieces because it's so heavy that a semi truck can only take one piece of the machine at a time. Brought it back to north of Holly Street. So in this picture here, you have the shaft, and then the road at the top is Redwood Shores Parkway. And then right on the other side of that is the Samtrans yard in the airport, just for context. And in the other picture where you see the map, where it says airport segment alignment, that's like the middle of the runway. And then the blue dot is the main shaft. So on the other side of Redwood Shores Parkway on airport property. And then the red dot is the 30 approach end that's on Bear Island, which the airport also owns a large portion of Bear Island. So it's been, so if we didn't have the shaft here, then about 200 trucks per day would have to go all the way down Redwood Shores Parkway from the treatment plant at the end of Redwood Shores Parkway, rather than 200 trucks a day leaving our property, which is much easier on the community. The airport is making non-aeronautical revenue from this project, and they are paying us about $100,000 a month while they're doing this project. For the amount of work that the assistant airport manager is doing for this project, we probably should have charged more, but it is a great deal of money for the airport. And so when I talk about non-aeronautical revenue, these are the types of projects that, one, we spend a great deal of our time managing, because each crane, each piece of equipment has to be coordinated with the FAA. And so in each crane, each piece of equipment has to have a NOTAM filed. And so it's been quite a bit of work for the airport staff. But again, we like revenue. But this is an interesting project. So they actually have a website where you can see videos and the progress and time-lapsed videos. So it's very interesting if anybody's interested. And then this is actually my last slide, but I put this one up here. This is a picture of a Hiller event, their runway run. And the reason I put it up here is last year, or maybe the year before, I was at an airport managers conference, and the Mojave airport manager was talking about some of the really interesting, unusual requests and projects that they do at their airport. I mean, they do all kinds of things, right, with space and spacecraft and aircraft and industry. It's really unusual that you don't normally have at airports. And she was saying that her attitude is that she and her staff always try to say yes. They always try and say yes to these requests that they get from industry and from businesses. And and now remember, airports are very heavily regulated by the FAA, right? There's all these rules from the airports division of the FAA that we have to follow, and all these things that we can't do, right? Height restrictions, use restrictions, non-aeronautical restrictions, revenue restrictions. So saying yes is hard sometimes, but that really struck a chord with me. And I was with the assistant airport manager, and we talked about it later. It's like, we want to be able to say yes, right? So she talked about how she and her staff work through all the reasons why they would, normally say no, and then try and push past them, try and say yes, try and get to yes. And so I put this picture up here because when Hiller first asked about the runway run, we were like, no, there's no way we can do that, right? We can't close the runway for non-aeronautical events. The FAA will never let us do that. We think that might be an impossible ask. And then we asked the FAA and they said no, right? And then we asked the FAA again, they said no. And then we just kept refining our ask until they said yes. And now, I mean, this year doesn't count, right? But every other year that Hiller's had this event, it's like a community favorite and an airport favorite. And it's good, it's great for the museum. It's also great for the airport, right? Because, we want to have positive press and tie with the community in positive ways. And, really nothing does it better than this. So this is a good example of, saying yes when initially we thought we would have to say no. And we're not always successful at doing that, right? But we try. That's how we try to manage the airports. And that's our goal anyway. And sometimes we have to be reminded, but we're very lucky. One other thing I wanted to say is a lot of airports, don't have good relationships with their businesses. We're very, very fortunate that we have amazing businesses at both airports and good relationships with our businesses, right? And so we have partnerships, right, with the community, even our noise complainers, right? They help us with our noise programs, even though they don't always like the airport. We have really good relationships with our businesses and tenants, which has really helped this year when everyone is really struggling, right? We really want to help everybody stay in business. Our tenants, our businesses, like sometimes they come in with ideas, these are really smart people that we didn't think of, right? And we're like, oh yeah, so we have to throw out our ideas and, start over. So we try to stay open to new ideas because there's really smart people at our airport. So sometimes the really good idea doesn't come from the airport management, right? But comes from somewhere else on the airport or the community. So anyway, I will stop talking because I could go on and on because I'm such an airport nerd. But I think airport management is an interesting, unusual career, and it's definitely not boring. That's for sure.
All right. Thank you, Gretchen. That's intriguing and interesting. And I will say that, your job is so challenging, this being this interface between the public and private users of an airport and a government agency. You're like stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you have just performed that function so wonderfully here at this airport, and you're a pleasure to work with. So we enjoy working with you here at Hiller Aviation Museum, and thank you for all the efforts. And we know behind the scenes how hard it is to pull off things like the runway run. We watched how that process took months and months to go through to see if we could make that happen. We do have a bunch of questions, and we'll get to all of them. I'm going to throw out one quick question. You, like all airport managers, are writing grants, but you used to be a grant reviewer for the FAA. Does that mean that your grants are just like perfect and pristine and ready to go every time?
You would think so. So I have an advantage because I usually know what the FAA is going to ask us or want us. I usually know what they're going to say, right? Ahead of them saying it when we go in with a project or a proposal. But FAA priorities change from year to year. And so I will say that successful airports align their asks, their projects with the FAA priorities. Like for a while, the FAA wanted runway safety areas, runway object-free areas, which is why our fuel tank moved, right? Then pavement. And so if you go through and align your project list with the FAA priorities, whether it's what you really want that year or the next year or not, right? You shuffle things around. That helps airports to be more successful. So doing that, I think, is the key. Rather than trying to push something forward that the airport really wants, that the FAA isn't wanting to fund that year, is where a lot of airports get hung up.
Right. That makes sense. So you have to have your ear attuned to the prevailing winds at the FAA to get the best attention from them. At San Carlos Airport, how many hangars are there? People are asking how many small T's, medium T's, large T's, boxes, large box. Do you have those numbers ready to rattle off at the tip of your tongue?
I don't. I should. But my amazing staff would know off the top of their head. But I think there's about 240 total hangars, I'm going to say. But I don't know how many of each. I'd have to stop and think about it.
Is there a waiting list still?
There is a waiting list of, I want to say, last time I looked, there were 90 people on the waiting list, but at least 75.
Is
They've
it 30
been-
years long like the last waiting list was?
No, it's actually not. So the Pilots Association and I think the business, I don't know if the Business Association was involved at this time, but in 2008, Pilots Association and the airport staff worked on a new hangar policy. There's a $500 deposit and some other rules that sort of weeded out people that weren't serious on the list and prevented, people from like passing down hangars. So the list is about 2 to 3 years, depending on the type of hangar, 2, 3, 4 years now. So the list actually moves quite a bit.
At Half Moon Bay, how is the restaurant open yet? The last time I was there, I was peering in through the glass and they were still setting things up. That was a couple months ago. So what's the status there?
They are just finishing their renovations. We're really excited. The name of the restaurant will be Pilot Light, and the owners and operators also own and operate Allspice in San Mateo. If people are familiar with Allspice, they're a Michelin star restaurant in San Mateo. Pilot Light will be not as high end as Allspice. It'll be open for breakfast and lunch initially, and then they may have been open for dinner later. But I was there a week or two ago. I looked inside and it looks beautiful. They're doing amazing renovations. It's like white and gray, and they have some brass lights, and it looks very light and bright and cheery in there. The picnic benches out back are bright yellow. They painted the trim around the windows bright yellow outside. It looks great. So I'm thinking, last time I talked to the owners, and who were very nice, they said it would be open soon.
Did the old 30 Cafe close because of the pandemic, or what was the situation with that?
It was pre-pandemic, and Joe Gore retired. He was ready to retire. Yeah, so he gave us notice and retired after a long time there.
Yeah, there's a lot of lore there with the 30 Cafe, but at least we have a new restaurant, and it's a time to start some new lore with this new restaurant, the Pilot Light, which is cute. Speaking of Half Moon Bay Airport, here's a question about birds. Are there more issues with them at Half Moon Bay, being near the bay? And also, have there been close calls at Half Moon Bay especially with fog and other issues going on around there a lot?
Believe it or not, we have fewer birds at Half Moon Bay. The birds at the airport at Half Moon Bay are generally hawks and egrets, and I think plus there's more space at Half Moon Bay too. But the hawks are smart, and they generally are just interested in field mice, gophers. They don't go near the runway, so they sit on top of the hangars and just hang out for the mice, and there's usually only a handful of them. And the egrets, the great herons, the big gray ones, we see those in the fields, but generally they're just waiting for like the field mice as well. But we don't see too many birds. Like at San Carlos, we'll get the flocks of geese. Don't really see that at Half Moon Bay, fortunately.
Yeah, the inland bay water life. You were talking with me before we went on about kind of the environment at San Carlos Airport with the flight schools being really busy, and how much flying is being done, and how different categories of flying are more than others right now because of the pandemic. Can you kind of repeat a little bit of that? Because it sounds like people were interested in that.
Yeah, I wish I had included my slide about the operations this year. Davey, our communication specialist, who works with us full-time, fortunately, because when I was hired in 2012, we had 34 noise complaints a year. And then in 2017, we had like 34,000 noise complaints a year. So things changed. And so we hired, 3 years ago, we hired a full-time airport communication specialist, Davey Howard. So he's on staff with us now, thankfully. And Davey keeps statistics for us, which is great. And he gave me a chart the other day, excuse me, on the operations, comparing 2019, January through October, to 2020, January through October. I don't have that in front of me, but it really showed the impact of the pandemic overall. There were, January and February, pretty normal. And then March, April, May, June, July, some of those months were, 50, 60, 70% reductions in traffic on average in 2020 as compared to 2019.
These
So
takeoffs and landings, by the way, is that what?
just arrivals.
Okay, right.
It's
Okay.
just arrivals that we were tracking. So, I mean, a huge impact to our businesses here at the airport. And because, people come to the airport to visit our businesses, right? That's why they're here, to go to Hiller, to go to the restaurant, to go to the flight schools, to visit our businesses. So everyone was very significantly impacted. The last couple months, and I'm sure we're going to start to see a decrease again now that we're in the purple tier. The last couple months, activity started to come back, but it's a change in our fleet mix. Prior to the pandemic, we had a lot of charter activity. Now our flight schools are very busy, and the flight schools have told us that people want to fly themselves. They don't want to fly the airlines. They don't want to go to an airport. They don't want to get on, an airliner. They don't want to, travel with other people, sit in a seat next to other people. They want to fly themselves. So a lot of people are either buying an airplane and learning how to fly, or continuing their training so that they can fly either in the mountains or fly IFR, instrument training. So it's been interesting that our flight schools are very, very busy, but our charter activity has decreased. Our landing fees are down for sure. The charter ramp, the transient ramp is not as busy. We're selling more avgas, less jet fuel. So interesting how things have changed.
Is there an overall decrease in net revenue to the airport, and you have to correspondingly tighten up expenses, or are the revenue streams simply changing and you're still pretty much keeping even? There's
definitely been a decrease. We are fortunate, again, unlike our businesses, is, because a lot of our revenue comes from business fees, but it's a couple months behind, right? So our businesses give us a percentage of revenue. So it's generally a month or two behind, depending. Some agreements are 1 month behind, some are 2 months behind. So we had a couple months warning where our businesses didn't. Everyone had to just shut down, right? So as soon as the pandemic started, we just slashed our budget. We just canceled. We just postponed, canceled, pushed off projects that weren't absolutely necessary, and put all of that money into our reserve fund, to get us through the pandemic. So, excuse me, we were fortunate that we were able to do that. And then we've been able to use that money as a buffer. Business fees are down. We also gave our businesses the option to defer rent through the pandemic and then pay it back without interest over a 12-month period, once this ends. And so some businesses have deferred some months, not all. Some have deferred more than others. So revenue's down, but it's still coming in.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess we can finish up with one interesting gossipy kind of a question, and that is Kelly Gleason reports that he's heard rumors that Larry Ellison's son used to fly a MiG out of SQL. Is that true? A MiG? Have you heard of that?
I don't know. I've never seen a MiG at the airport.
Would a MiG owner want to land at the airport with the, it depends on the MiG, I guess, but the distance of the runway is kind of short, right? I don't know.
There did used to be an Italian fighter jet based at the airport. It was a Marchetti, I believe it was called, at San Carlos Airport. And it operated, out of our little runway.
Okay.
But I haven't seen, if there was a MiG, I was unaware of it, but I bet I would have known about it from noise complaints.
Right. Well, and we at the Hiller Aviation Museum, when we contemplated air show operations back in the day when we did vertical challenge, we discovered how many warbirds and other kinds of aircraft owners of high performance aircraft did not want to fly in and out of San Carlos Airport because they just felt that they were pushing the margins on the runway length there. But, that's neither here nor there. Nothing like a MiG going out onto Redwood Shores Boulevard on takeoff or something like that.
Don't want to do that.
Don't usually want to. And I guess one last question I had, you had mentioned the boring tunnel going on the northeast corner by the intersection there. Does that mean the airport owns all the land on all the corners of that intersection? I was always confused as to what parts the airport owned and didn't own in that whole intersection of the Redwood Shores and Airport Road there.
No, but we're trying to get them all. So when you drive into the airport from Redwood Shores Parkway, the parcel where the sign is,
Right.
we do not own, but we have been trying to acquire for a long time.
Which is why it's
And-
not beautifully landscaped or something.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That's exactly why, because that's what we want to do with it. We want to acquire it and then make it beautiful. And everyone involved wants us to acquire it and make it beautiful, but we are having a hard time figuring out who owns it. And as soon as we think we know who owns it, we find out that that person doesn't own it. So we're still working on that. But we're going to make it beautiful one of these days. But we own the corner across from that with the bollards where you see.
Right. Where the goats go, right?
Yes.
Yes. I figured that if goats were there, that means the county owns it or something, right?
Yeah, we love the goats.
Okay.
And then
Well,
we
that
own
was-
17 acres across the street.
Well, Gretchen, it sounds fascinating. Your world is a wild and crazy world of airport management. But we're so happy that you're our airport manager here at San Carlos Airport. And it's such a pleasure to work with you. And it was great to have you as our guest tonight. I want to thank you for coming. So for those of you who enjoyed her presentation, and I believe it was everybody, please give her a little bit of a thumbs up or a hand clap using the reaction key there at the bottom of your Zoom screen so that we can show our proper appreciation to Gretchen. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then for everybody, please join us in 2 weeks as we host Second Lieutenant Anthony Turner with his talk on becoming an Air Force pilot. And we look forward to that on the 16th of December. So until then, stay safe, everybody, and have a great week. And we'll see you in 2 weeks here at the Hiller Aviation Museum Hiller Hangar Talk. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye. Thank you.